So in poultry farming, there are actions that you take that you cannot reverse. For instance, after you've acquired your land and then you bring in equipment to clear your land, a grader, whether it's a D7, a D8, it doesn't matter. Once you put those blades down and you scrape the entire land, one thing that you have done is that you have scraped away the topsoil, and you cannot reverse that action. That's one. Secondly, planting on such a terrain is going to be extremely difficult except you import new material, topsoil material. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Patrick Ohifeme. In this video, I will be continuing from where I stopped the last time. The last video, I talked about what you need to know to identify the land that you need, the suitable land that you need for your layer poultry farm, your commercial layer farming business. Okay, so in this video, I will be talking to you about all that you need to know about land preparation and the structures and the buildings that you need to put in place to start your layer farm business. So let's get right into it. Now, if you are watching this video for the first time, please remember to hit the subscription button, turn on the notification bell so that every time I drop a new video, you will be the first to know. Please also remember to drop your comments in the comment section so that we can make this an interactive, experience, so that I hear from you and you can also hear from me. Now, once you have gotten your land, the land that you want to use for your poultry farm, the next thing is how do you, prepare the land and how do you set up your buildings? Now, most people, the first thing they do for commercial, layer farms, they get, they go and hire a grader brought in by a low bed, drop it and they start to scrape. Well, I do not advise that because, again, if you look at, the challenges today in poultry farming, it is the fact that, there are rising cost of materials. And what this means is that every little space that every farm owner has on their farm, they should make effort to plant, the kind of crops that their birds would eat. I'll talk about that in greater detail, in another video. So make sure that you only clear the area that you need for construction work. If you buy a land, a big land, please do not go and scrape the topsoil, the entire vegetation off that land. It's a costly mistake that you would not enjoy in due time. So the first thing you want to do after you've secured your land is to clear the area that you want to site your buildings. So when you have done that, the next thing you want to do is to set up, your store. This store is where you put your cement, you put your wheelbarrows, your head pans, your shovels, and all of that. And of course, the security guy who's going to be on site would also use that place as, his place of shelter in the time being, since it's a new project and it's a new land. Now, one thing I like to tell people who are going into commercial, layer business is that store must be built also strategically, because that store can be converted into another useful purpose after construction is done. So make sure that from day one, you do not go for a shabby, poor structure. No, it's either you're going to convert the materials to use or you are going to convert the store to use. Whichever one you choose, make sure that it's a deliberate decision. It's very important. Now, so after you've gotten your store, the next thing you want to do is to situate your borehole, because you're going to need water in order to go into construction. Now, so what do? Ensure that you already have an understanding, because I believe that anybody who is going into a commercial layer farm business must have an expert. You must have a guide. Now, you look at the entire farm landscape. Where do you want to situate your pens? Now, your borehole must not be close to the pen area, especially where the manure, the chicken droppings. Because don't forget that we're talking about a commercial layer farm where you're going to have a minimum of 10,000 birds. Now, what's going to happen is that you're going to have a large pool of chicken droppings. And we're also going to talk about that in this video, okay? Managing the chicken droppings. So, you want to make sure that your borehole is not anywhere close to where you have your, manure, area. It's very, very wrong. So you situate your boreholes at areas where it will not come in contact with the chicken droppings. Now, I also advise for water security. For a commercial layer farm, you should have a minimum of 2 boreholes. So now that we've dealt with water, the next thing you need to do is to fence your land. You need to fence your land. Fence your land, the land that you intend to use for this layer farm business. Make sure it's completely fenced. And then you have your gate house, you have your gate, and then you're going to have your gate deep, okay? That's an area where, we put in disinfectants that, make sure that bacteria and other pathogens do not get into the farm, by way of vehicle tires. Even though you're also going to have, sprays for these vehicles when they come in. But the first thing is to make sure that as you're constructing your gate, you have a well-constructed gate deep. It must be properly designed at that time so that as vehicles, trucks, come into your farm, whether to offload, the birds or to buy birds or any other activity, or to drop feed, even if it's your farm vehicle that is carrying egg, they must pass through that gate deep all the time, and that gate deep is going to hold disinfectant. So you're going to construct that as you are beginning your business, as you're beginning your farm. Now, the next thing you want to talk about is the pen building. Now, I do not know how many pen buildings you want to start with, okay? But understand that for me, what I advise is that whatever building you are trying to start up, I do not advise you having more than 2 lines. 2 lines of chicken, line A and line B. The reason is because, before now, we used to do 3 lines, 1, 2, 3. We found out over time that the lines in the middle always had the highest mortality, because these guys who are on the edge always have, air from, the side, the sides of the pen. So you want to make sure that you go with the 2-line system. Now, I will not be able to advise you on the length of your pen because, like I said, I do not know how many birds you intend to keep. So the length of your pen will be determined by the number of birds you want to keep in that pen and the number of cages, but the width is what should give you ample space for your 2 cage lines. Your cage is around 2.1 meters, width. And of course, I also encourage you to use a scraper machine for taking out your droppings. Often I see smaller farms, they have sawdust, they have tarpaulin for evacuating chicken droppings. But if you're going to have a minimum of 10,000 birds, the amount of man hours that will be needed to evacuate that, that amount of droppings is going to be quite huge. So you want to make sure that you install your scraper machines, in that pit so that they can evacuate your chicken droppings. Now, the height of the pen is also very important. As a matter of fact, one thing you need to know when you're setting up your pen building is that there has to be adequate ventilation. Ventilation is extremely important. So that means that you must make sure that the sides of the pen have nettings, okay, so that it can allow for, air to get into the pen freely and go out, okay, so that it continues to ensure that the temperature within the pen is, a bearable one for the birds, right? Now, so the height of the building is also important. I've seen, situations where people build pens and, you raise your hand, you can touch, you can almost touch, the wood, the rafters. No. Ensure that your pen is nothing less than 3.5 meters high. It's very, very important. Okay. Now, in front of the pen, you're also going to have your own food dip. That is for the staff. You know, in my own case, I don't just encourage food dip, I also have water dip. So it means that the staff use their foot, you know, in the dip, and then just beside that dip, there's also the one for your hand, where you also use for disinfecting your hand as you step into that pen. So make sure that that is also taken into consideration as you are constructing your pen. Now, I like to tell you as an investor, the quality of materials that you use in building your pen is important. You cannot pay too much attention to that. You must pay adequate attention to that. I've seen farms where, you know, the building is nothing to write home about. I've seen farms too where the poultry building has collapsed on birds. And then you find the owner struggling. She or he has to get carpenters to, you know, try and remove the roof, remove the wood to save as many birds as they can. That is a complete disaster. So you make sure you get a qualified personnel to set up your building, because that building is going to house your investment. The birds are the kings of the farm. They produce and provide the money through the eggs that they lay. So ensure that they are in a secure and well-constructed building. Now, the roof is another area I find that farms also have challenges. Now, because of the long span nature of the roofing materials and because of the length of the pens, you find that when there's strong winds, you know, it blows away the roofing or, you know, destroys the sheet completely. Ensure that your roofing materials are quality materials. It's very, very important. And then for the chicken droppings, you must ensure that the area where you will be collecting your manure is properly designed. Do not forget that manure is real income for the farm. Real income. So you don't want a situation where, you know, the amount of manure you get at the end of, you know, a particular period is less because, you know, maybe rain and erosion and all of that has reduced your manure. So from day one, when you're constructing your pen, have your manure collection area properly designed, because it is very, very, you know, crucial to your profit levels, you know, as far as manure and manure sales are concerned. Now, after the pen buildings, there are other important, you know, buildings, you know, smaller buildings though, that you need to have in your farm. You need your egg store. That is an area where you collect your eggs, and then from there they can be shipped to your sales point and distributed to your off-takers. Okay, so that's very important. I cannot also tell you the size of the egg store, because this also is determined by the number of beds. If you have 100,000 beds, if you have 20,000 beds, you know what size, you know, of course they aren't the same size. Then you're going to have an isolation area, you know, like what we call a sick pen, where you also keep sick beds. That is also away from where you have your pen, where the healthy beds are kept. Okay, so you're going to need a sick pen where you keep, you know, beds that are not healthy. Then you're also going to have your feed store. Most times, commercial farms, they start, you know, small, they start gradually. So they may not start with their own feed mill, okay, their feed mill building or their feed mill. So they start buying commercial feed. So you're going to need a feed store to keep your feed. Then also, what you also need in the farm, okay, you are going to need depending on, you know, your size, you're going to need offices, maybe 1 or 2. Okay, you're going to need office space, so you're going to have to make a building where you have office space. Then you're going to have the staff room. That is also very important, because the staff need a place where they can rest. This staff room doesn't necessarily mean it is staff house. So you need at least 3-4 rooms where, you have partition for office, you have the partition for the staff room where they can, change up, eat, rest, and a couple of things. Now, if your farm is a very big one and you want to have a staff quarters, that is also part of the buildings that you will need on your farm. Okay, so basically these are the buildings that you need to get your farm up and running. Of course, the generator stand, or whether you're going to draw light, that is it depends on your farm location. If you're going to draw light, that's fine. If you're going to use generator to power your farm or solar, that you would also have to make provision for the structure that is going to sustain that. So this is all for this video. I'll see you again in the next video where I will be discussing a new topic. Please, until then, stay tuned and bye-bye.